Welcome back to another episode of the Dimway Podcast. I got a cool guest on. I know some of you guys have heard my interview with Paul Dominguez, and I love having that conversation with him. And I won't say better, but he's another one of those guys that
equal.
Yeah, I just love to hang out with, talk cigars, and I benefit from hanging out with them because they always give me nice cigars and say you will never find this cigar again, especially this one I'm smoking. And he's going to tell me a little bit about it. But we got Joe Lesson on the podcast. So how you doing, Joe?
Doing great.
I've been wanting to have you on the podcast for a while, and we finally got together.
I know we've been talking about it for a while.
So let me know, what is this cigar that you give?
It's a Butera Poco Buela, which means little beauty. And I've probably had it for about 15 plus years. And best of my knowledge, they no longer make them anymore.
Oh, wow. So y'all, like I said, y'all always give me something that I probably never had. So I get to enjoy some of these good things. And I appreciate y'all for that. How's your day going, man?
So far, so good.
So far, so good. Like I said, I'm happy you be on the show. What are you smoking?
I am smoking a Meat Lovers red meat.
That's a good one. You've given me my first one. Well, no, I can't remember. Either you or Paul gave me my first one, but I think you have given me.
I probably did at Scenic City.
Mm-hmm. And I've been going up there to Scenic and stuff. OCL is always moving home, but I enjoy going to Scenic City with Rob. And I remember you and Rob used to come down for Cuban Fridays.
Well, they're all good.
Mm-hmm.
No matter which shop you go to, I mean, they're all brotherhoods.
Yeah. So how many cigars do you have? You have a lot of cigars.
Well, I have about 7,500.
Wow.
Probably a little bit more than that, but that's what I brought with me when we moved to Tennessee.
And where did you live from before then?
Washington, D.C.
I'm from Maryland, so I know the area.
Well, actually, I lived in the Maryland area.
Okay. Yeah.
I lived in Germantown, Maryland.
Germantown. I know what Germantown is.
And prior to that, though, we lived up on Capitol Hill, up on 7th Street, Southeast.
Okay. What were you doing? What were you doing in D.C.?
Well, I started out in 1973, and my number was 32 in the draft. It was the last year of the draft, and they were up to 30. So I figured discretion was a better part of valor. Mm-hmm. So I enlisted in the Army and had a guaranteed enlistment to the Old Guard, which was the Army Honor Guard.
Okay.
And ended up going to the Old Guard in, actually it was July the 1st. I checked in 1973.
Wow. So explain that job to people that wouldn't know what that is, listening to us wouldn't know what that is.
Well, there's several different jobs that the Old Guard does. And the Old Guard is the oldest Army unit in the country. Okay. And the reason why they call them the Old Guard, they also call them the Army Honor Guard. They do things like casket bearers, firing parties, marching platoons. When you see at the White House and you see all of the service members that are lined up from the different branches, well, that's a marching party, as they call it. They have the caissons that do the ceremonies in Arlington Cemetery, and they're stationed at Fort Myer, Virginia, which is right adjacent. I mean, it's literally attached to Arlington Cemetery. And they also have the Army Color Guard. Okay. They have the Army Drill Team, and they also have the Army Sentinels for the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, which a lot of people think that it's the Marines because we wear dress blues, but no, it's Army.
So how long were you in the Army?
I was 4 years active duty. Okay. Spent 3 years in the D.C. area and a year in Berlin, Germany. 1976, and the wall was still up.
Oh, okay.
And you could get a German or a Russian belt for a Bic click.
What is that?
The Bic click, the lighter.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah.
Plastic lighters. For a Bic click, you could get a Russian belt that was a brass belt buckle with the Russian Army insignia on it, and you could do that at Checkpoint Charlie, or when you went out to what they call the Berlin Helmstedt Autobahn, which was one of the only ways you could get out of town.
Now, how did you like being in Germany? I know my family. My dad was in the Army, and so from 1990 to 1993, we went on bomb hole to Germany. I was too young to really, get a chance to experience it. I didn't really like it because I was away from family, cousins, and things like that. But I remember one place that we went to. I think it's called Birch's Garden. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but
Birch's Garden. That's the where Hitler had one of his. I don't know if you want to call it a hideout, but it's where he used to go and hang out with Eva Braun and was one of his resort areas.
Yeah, and I actually learned that from a show I was watching called Band of Brothers. And that name came up and I called my mom and I was like, I remember this word, I brought Birch was like, yeah, I think we went about 2 or 3 times and that's a cool place I liked, and I remember seeing the mountains and was like, I'd never seen mountains look like that before. And that was a cool spot.
Can I tell you a little story about the Band of Brothers?
Sure, yes, go.
There was 2 of them that were in D.C. that were, I actually saw them at a lunch at the Heritage Foundation. A friend of mine invited me. And I talked to them and I asked them if they would like to go and meet the guys at Walter Reed. Because my wife and I had done a number of different things with the troops at Walter Reed.
Okay.
And so they said yes, they wanted to go. So I called my contact and he said, I can set it up this afternoon. I said, great. So I took Buck Compton and Don Malarkey.
Wow.
And if you remember, Buck Compton was the Lieutenant Compton, the one that was shot in the behind. And he was also the one that always smoked cigars.
Yeah.
And then also Don Malarkey was the one that ran out in the field to try to get the gun from the dead German soldier out in the field.
Because he wanted a Ruger, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And he got shot at. And everybody asked him, they say, why did you do that? And his response is, I don't know. It was stupid. And another interesting part about Buck Compton, when he got out, he used the GI Bill, went to law school, and ended up becoming a lawyer, and then became a judge and was a federal judge. And he was the judge for Sirhan's trial.
Wow.
Yes, which a lot of people don't know.
That is cool. I wish I could have had experience like that, because that show I liked it. And I've actually been thinking about going back to watch that because I like the war movies and the war shows and things like that. And, especially like in the World War II and stuff like that. I just enjoy those. I think one of my favorite ones, Behind Enemy Gates or Enemy Lines.
Yeah.
With the sharpshooters. And I remember watching that movie and it was like, man, I really enjoyed this movie. So that was pretty cool. So how was your experience in, you said, Germany? Well, I'm sorry, I lost
Berlin, Germany.
Berlin. Like, how was your experience there?
Well, it was very interesting because it was during the time when the wall was up.
Okay.
Being 1976, and interestingly enough, I got involved with a group called Stitch in Hand.
Okay.
And which means helping hand, as I understand it. Brother Theo Schmidt.
Okay.
And we used to take these calendars that had Bible verses on each one of the pages. And we used to take them across Checkpoint Charlie into East Berlin.
Okay.
And we had 3 churches and 2 bridges. Now people say, what did you say? I said 3 churches and 2 bridges. Because as soon as we went across, the interesting thing is when you went across Checkpoint Charlie, they couldn't check your car. They could look at it, they could look at the outside, look underneath it, but they couldn't have you get out, and they couldn't actually physically check the inside of it.
Okay.
So we used to take these big containers that were like the kind that you put chicken in, that's fresh chicken, that they're big wax cardboard containers. Well, that's what we would put these Bibles in, or these calendars that had the Bible verses on them. And we'd take them, and we had 3 churches, that we could drop them off, or the two bridges. And the reason is because as soon as you went across, they start following you. And so if you thought you were being followed, you had to lose them.
Yeah.
And so once you lose them, you either had, if you were close to one of the churches, you either threw them in the church door real quick, which we did many times, or you stuffed them underneath one of the bridges, and they came and got them later on in the night when they knew that they were there. And one of the neat things is that one of the churches, the pastor had two sons that were going to a VOTEC school. And because they were Christians, they couldn't go anywhere else but to the VOTEC school.
Okay.
They wouldn't let them go to college, and they wouldn't let them go to the higher learning because they were Christians. And so we used to buy Levi jeans for them and Levi cords at the PX, and we would put them in the boxes with the calendars, and they would wear these Levi's to school, and they were like rock stars because none of these kids had ever seen the Levi's or Levi cords, and how in the world did they get them? And it was a testament to God that they were able to get them.
Yes, sir. That's a cool story. That's one of the reasons why I like have you on the show, because I love hearing these cool stories back in the day and things like that. So you stayed only 1 year in Berlin?
Only 1 year. I mean, I have no idea why the Army sent me over there for 12 months. But they did. And in their infinite wisdom, that's what they did.
He said, I just go where they send me. Now, were you married at the time? Or?
No, I was single and didn't, get married until after I got out of the service, active duty. In fact, once I got out, I was going to school in Germantown. Or actually, it was in Rockville at Montgomery College, which was a junior college. And we used to call it Harvard on the Pike.
Wow.
It was on Rockville Pike, if you remember Rockville Pike.
Yeah. I had a buddy. I actually went to leave with. He's from Rockville. He's a good friend of mine.
And then after I left Montgomery College, I went to Hood College in Frederick, Maryland, and graduated from Hood College. And the significant part is that Hood College is a private girls' college. As I tell people, my mama didn't raise no dummy.
That's funny.
It's a private girls' college, but you could go back then if you were what they call continuing ed, which was 23 years of age or older, and you were a commuting student.
Okay.
So we couldn't live on campus, and we couldn't be any less than 23 years of age.
So you fell in that little category where you can do it.
Yep, and I got my degree from them. I got a degree in psychology from them.
Now, I did psychology. I didn't finish my school, but I wanted to do psychology. Actually, if I would have did something more like this, like communications or something like that, I think I would have been more interested in it and did more with it. But school is not my favorite thing.
Well, it wasn't my favorite thing either, but I also knew that when I was in the Army, that I realized very quickly that I didn't want to be the ditch digger anymore. I wanted to be the one that told them where to dig the ditch.
Oh, for sure.
So that's why when I got out of school, in fact, before I went into service, I was in college. And my first year of college, I had academic dismissal. I passed one course.
Wow.
I went to junior college in Fort Scott, Kansas, and they brought all my grades up to a C, and my parents go, yes, there is a God. And then I got reinstated into the 4-year college.
Okay.
And then that's when I found out my draft number was 32, and they were up to 30. And that's why I decided that I wanted to go.
So that was that exciting for you, or were you nervous being drafted? Like, I don't think I've ever talked to anybody that been through that process.
Well, I should probably tell you too. My dad was in the Army Air Corps. He was a belly gunner on a B-24, and he also was in the Flying Tigers over in China with General Claire Lee Chenault. You know, the guys that have the fighters with the faces on the front of them.
Yeah.
You know? Well, that was, the Flying Tigers. And so he spent time in China as well. And so I was always raised in a small town in Kansas, about 1,500. And the American Legion was one of the very focal points of our town. Okay. And so I was always around veterans. And so I always thought that was a cool thing. You know, I didn't look at it as a negative thing.
Okay.
And so when I went in, I can very distinctly remember that I was at Pittsburgh, Kansas of all places, which was about 20 miles south of where I grew up.
Okay.
And it was a kind of a rainy, misty day, and my mother and my aunt were standing out in front, and my dad was standing behind them as I was getting on the bus to go to Kansas City to the MEPS to get sworn in.
Mm-hmm.
And both my mother and my aunt were crying. And my dad was standing back behind him with the biggest shit-eating grin on his face because he knew what was going to happen. He knew my life was going to change in 12 hours.
Wow, yeah. I know my brother, when he went to the Navy, I was at school here, and I got the privilege to hang out with him the night before he went and swore in and everything. Like the night before he went to boot camp. He was going off, I think it was in Indiana. So I happened to be on spring break here, and I went home to Maryland, Edgewood, Maryland, and he was there, and so it was a cool experience to get to see him off and get to hug him. I didn't think I was going to get the opportunity, but I did, and it was cool. And I think his life now was even better joining the Navy. So he's got a master's degree and everything. Like, he took advantage of.
It's the best way to do it, and
Yeah.
that's a great way for a lot of young kids to be able to learn a trade that doesn't cost them anything to learn the trade. They can make money while they're doing it. When they get out, they can then immediately go into one of the industries because they're always looking for veterans that have certain trades and can fit right into what they need. So it's a great way for them to be able to get an education and a job and not have to cost anything.
Yeah. So if I wasn't in the wheelchair, I would have joined the military. Just because in my personality, I need structure. If you give me if I don't have like rules, like I'll just be all over the place. I'm already like a go with the flow guy, so like I just, especially in my early years, I'm like, you gotta tell me to do this. If you tell me what I gotta do, I'll do it. But if you give me like a task to do within certain, I'm gonna do it at the last minute.
I'll run you through basic.
That and make about bed. I joke with people now, and growing up, we always had to make our bed up, and for some reason I just hated making my bed up. And I say when I got my own place, I would never make my bed up. And now I want to make my bed up because it creates like that structure. It creates the first task of the day. You doing something productive.
Exactly.
But at first I'm like, I just don't want to make my bed up. And like as a kid, I was like, why do I have to make my bed up when I'm about to get right back in it?
No, believe me. In fact, when I was in Berlin, Germany, I was lucky enough to be in a room by myself. Okay. And it had two cots or two beds in it. And actually, one of them was made up, and I stretched it so hard and latched it underneath so that blanket was so tight. I mean, you could flip a quarter on it, and it just stayed that way. Nobody ever sat on it or slept on it. And the other one, I just pulled out a couple of army blankets, threw them out, laid on it, changed the army blankets in once a week. Yeah. And got them cleaned, and that's what I used to sleep on. And it stayed. So when somebody walked in for inspection, they saw one bunk made up and one bunk that didn't have anything on it. So they didn't even pay attention to the second one because it was a one person in a 2-man room.
That's cool. So I like that. Talking about military stuff, like I said, I have family that's in the military. I even talked to my brother about stuff like that. We don't talk too much about it because whatever, but his wife is an officer in the Navy now, and they get to every 3 years, it's like they're in another city, and they're back on the East Coast now, so I get to see them. I just seen them a couple weeks ago, and I hadn't seen them in 3 years. It was in Washington State, so that's one thing I don't like about the military. Is like if they go too far out, I don't really get to see them.
Oh yeah,
and things like that. And I think my brother's first when he first got stationed, he went to Japan. So I didn't get to see him for like 3 years, and it was just like getting coming back. So I guess my next question is like coming back from Germany after a year. I know it was only a year, but did you have to get like acclimated back being in America?
No, not really, because it was, in fact, it felt good to be back home. At the time, Germany, all the door latches were the kind that were the long ones where you go like this with them, as opposed to turning them. And of course, everything back here in the States was the round where you had to turn it with your hand.
Yeah.
So we used to call America the land of round doorknobs, jokingly. But now in America, a lot of the doorknobs are the types they have over in Europe now, where you just push them down.
Yeah.
But I'll say this: you said you're from Edgewood.
Yes, sir.
All right. Do you know the airfield that's there in Edgewood, the Army airfield, where you see the helicopters and everything taking off all the time?
Yeah.
Well, after I got out of the military, active duty, I decided I missed it so much. About a year after I was out, so I went in the Maryland National Guard and ended up flying helicopters.
Oh wow! Well, you on the proving ground?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I never lived in the proving grounds in Edgewood, but Aberdeen, Maryland. I lived. That's where my dad was stationed first, and we lived on APG. But I went to I did go to the youth center and things like that in Edgewood.
Well, the Weedy Airfield, which is right there at Edgewood area. That's where we flew out of.
Okay.
And I flew in Loaches, which is low observation helicopters, OH-6s, OH-58s.
Okay.
We also had Hueys, and we had Cobras.
Okay.
And I was rated in all four of them. But I love the OH-6 the most.
Why is that?
Because it was very, very nimble. I mean, on a really warm day, like a lot of the days we've had here in Tennessee, the last couple of days where it's been 90-some degrees, with two people in it, you couldn't get it off the ground. Because you always had to look at what they call the TOT, the turbine output temperature. And if it gets too hot, it's out of specs and you can't use it.
Yeah.
And in a very hot day, you cannot get enough thrust to be able to get the lift to lift you up.
I got you.
But on the days you could, I mean, you think about turning and you're turning.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like being in a sports car.
Yeah, that sounds cool. I like that a lot. That'd probably be scary for me. I'm scared of heights, so being in a helicopter maybe not my favorite thing to do. But I don't know.
Would you ever jump out of a plane?
I would not.
Well, I have 151 jumps.
Wow. See, I have a buddy that actually used to do this podcast with me. He's in a wheelchair. He jumped out of the plane.
Oh, outstanding.
Yeah, and I'm like, you are a better man than I am.
You can do it. In fact, one of the guys that has been on the Tunnel to Towers commercials that was actually got completely paralyzed from the neck down from a parachute jump that he did in the military.
Oh.
They actually have a part of the commercial where he's coming down and he's parachuting with a guy with a tandem.
Okay.
And he's completely paralyzed from the neck down. Wow. And he's doing the jump. So you could do it.
I mean,
you could do it.
I appreciate the encouragement.
You could do it. Well, let me put it this way. Physically, you can do it.
Yeah.
Mentally, I don't know.
Yeah. That's a better way to put that, because I'm like, I know I can do it. But I think I'll be up there crying like, please don't make me do this.
Luke, I dare you. I dare you.
Please don't dare me, because you're going to have me doing it.
I dare you. In fact, that's how I got started jumping.
Wow.
We were when I was first going my first year of college after graduation, 1971, which, yes, I'm ancient. We were sitting in the student union, and a bunch of guys that I was with that were folks that I had played sports against. Then there was some cheerleaders from the different schools and what have you. Because most everybody in Southeast Kansas would go to this college if they were going to go to college because it was so available. And so all the guys that I played sports with all the, our conference, they all went. And then, of course, a lot of the cheerleaders. So they were all sitting around. And one of the guys that was born the same day I was in the same hospital was a good friend of mine. looked at me and said, "Joe, I dare you learn skydiving with me." Oops, excuse me, my phone.
That's all good.
So basically, he asked me, he said, "I dare you to learn how to skydive with me." Well, what am I going to say in front of all these guys that I played sports with and the cheerleaders? Was I going to say no? And have them say, "Oh yeah, sure, wuss."
Yeah.
So I said yes.
I think I would say yes too, but in the back of my head, I'm like, I'm bluffing right now.
The first jump wasn't the worst jump.
Real?
Second jump was.
Why was that?
Because you knew what to expect.
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. But what about the third jump?
Oh, that was no problem.
Okay.
After you got past the second one, no problem.
So I heard that when you jump out, it's a hard time like to start breathing, or
no, not at all. In fact, you're breathing really hard.
Okay.
Because it depends on what type of jump you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're doing free falls and anything above 10.5, if I remember correctly, the United States Parachute Association says that you have to wear oxygen. It might be a little bit higher than that. But when you get up to 9,000, 10,000 foot, it's a little harder to breathe because the air is a lot thinner. And when you're falling through doing the spread eagle, it's, the wind's going in your face. But it's not that hard.
Okay.
I mean,
yeah, that's what I heard that, and I'm like, I don't want to be up there having a panic attack.
But no, you don't believe me. You don't have panic attacks up there because you really have to think about what you're doing.
Okay.
And you have fun. And once you learn it, it's a lot of fun. And you can do a lot of things. There's things called max tracking where you just point yourself down and you can go 2 foot forward for every 3 foot you go down.
Wow. I mean, that does sound fun, but I don't know if it's convincing me to do it.
Well, but there's so much stuff you can do with it. It's just amazing.
Yeah. But if I ever do it, I will let you know.
Did daisy chaining where you hook up with folks, where you see them in a circle.
Oh, yeah.
And then they break apart. I've done that.
That's cool.
In a place called Harrington, Kansas, there was a Navy airfield in the middle of Kansas. Why Navy? I don't know.
Yeah.
There's no ocean in Kansas. There was many, many, many years ago, but not now. But they had miles and miles and miles of cement runways. And so basically what they did was when you catch a thermal with a certain type of chute that's a big chute, big round one, you could actually come and it would carry you up. You could go back around, it would take you up, and you could just keep going doing that circle for about a half hour on a really hot day. And right now is about the time you'd want to do it.
So when you're doing that on a hot day, is it like really, really hot?
Oh, really hot.
Wow.
But you catch that thermal when you take it up, and then you come out into the cooler air.
Okay.
And then you kind of guide your way around and go back over the runway, and then you go back up again and do that.
That sounds kind of cool. Look, I'm going to have to stop talking about it because you might convince me to do it.
I'm hoping.
So, I know we talked a little bit about cigars at the beginning, but how did you actually get into cigars?
Well, actually, 1977 was when I ETS'd from the service, which is estimated time of separation, to use a military jargon. And basically, I needed to find a job while I was going to school. Okay. Because I had the GI Bill, but it didn't pay for everything. Yeah. And so I needed to find a job, and I found a job at a tinderbox. Tinderbox was a franchise that would be in different malls. They were very small little shops, and they would sell cigars, pipes, and just other knickknacks. Yeah. And at the time, there weren't a lot of cigars out. I mean, the humidor was a very small. It was like a walk-in closet. Okay. With a sliding door on it. In fact, Fuente was, if I remember right, there was only the 858, the Canones, and the Curly Heads. Okay. They didn't have all the stuff that they have now. I think the Curly Head was probably my favorite cigar I ever smoked. Yeah. We had a bunch of them that had either male or female, boy or girl for babies.
Yeah.
That's what everybody handed out.
Okay. That's cool.
And so that's when I started learning how to smoke pipes.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, the big thing was Caminetto pipes,
Okay.
which were Italian.
Mm-hmm.
And they became Ascorti, and then they went back to Caminetto because there was two guys that did it. And one was named Caminetto and one was Ascorti. And so they would trade back and forth every once in a while.
I got you.
And now they're very, very expensive. But back then, even in '77, they were $75 a piece.
Oh, wow. Wow. So, I mean, you could probably give me 2 or 3, maybe 5 sticks, because I can't. But somebody has over 7,500 cigars. I don't think you just have a favorite stick.
Well, there is one that was my all-time favorite
Mm-hmm.
that they quit making in '99.
Okay.
And I have 500 of them. And that is H. Upman Columbus.
I've never heard of those.
Well,
Yeah, but
like I said, they were discontinued in '99.
and I was probably 14, 15 years old, so I wasn't smoking cigars.
Yeah. And basically, they had a Cameroon wrapper, and they were sort of a Presidente size.
Okay.
And the reason why they quit making them, as I understand it, was because they couldn't get the quality of wrapper that they wanted. So, for a large cigar like that.
Yeah.
So they ended up just discontinuing. And I went out on the internet, which was not much of an internet back then.
Yeah. Yeah.
And found all the different shops that were going, because this was kind of at the end of the boom.
Mm-hmm.
The shops that were closing down and everything. And they were sold in cabinets of 50 and boxes of 10.
Okay.
So I bought all the cabinets and boxes I could find.
Yeah. You gotta do what you gotta do. So.
And they're even better now.
I bet it is. I bet that's a long time sitting there. So, what is your favorite? Because I want to ask you, because everybody kind of had their. So Paul, for instance, Paul's a big Lancero guy.
Oh yeah, and he and I go back on this all the time because he says a Lancero that you can get more taste from the wrapper, and I don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
But when I first started smoking, the gentleman that was at Tinderbox taught me. He says, the longer the cigar is and the bigger the ring gauge, one, the cooler it's going to smoke.
Yeah.
And the larger the ring gauge, the more different types of tobacco they can put in to get the different tastes.
I got you.
So I'm leaning more to the 6x60 or even larger.
And that does make sense. With the Lancero, and I do love Lanceros because I think that they have their benefits. But sometimes I am a fast smoker. And so I will sit there and just smoke, and it'll get hot a lot faster sometimes than that would.
Oh, yeah.
And if it's hot, it's not going to
Well, I mean, you think about it. The longer it is, the longer it takes the smoke to get back to your lips.
Yeah.
Until you get down to where it's real short.
Yeah.
But when you're starting out, it's a much smoother, cooler smoke.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you can put different types of tobaccos in, many different types of tobaccos.
So I guess they have each have their own benefits. Because when I first started smoking, here's the thing. I've been only smoking 2 years consistently. So one of my favorite sticks at the beginning, and it still is today, is the Marcelago. Espinosa Marcelago. And I like the one that size, and then I like the Lancero. It just depends on the day. But I remember I gave Paul one because he had never had one, and just to give him something that he never had, it felt good just to give.
Well, the thing about it is cigar smoking is so subjective.
Mm-hmm.
What you can taste something and it tastes great to you, and I can taste it and I'm like, whoa, this is terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing that people really need to think about when they're smoking cigars is what attitude or what their feeling is at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And based on how I'm feeling depends on what I really like to smoke.
Yes, sir.
I can show you some Claros that'll knock your socks off. They're strong.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by Claro, the green ones, the real ones from the leaf that's from the lower down on the plant.
Mm-hmm.
And I can show you some Maduros that you were like, seriously, is there even any tobacco here?
Yeah.
And you can't judge a cigar by its looks.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people think that because it's a Maduro that it's going to be strong, but that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah.
Or that it's a natural that it's going to be, medium or light. No, that's not necessarily the case.
Mm-hmm. And I'm learning that because seeing people smoke, and I've always, I guess, thought that myself, but Connecticut is light and things like that. And I've seen somebody say, this is strong. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, what are you talking about? But I tried, but I like the Maduro though. I've had some good ones, some strong ones, and I had some not so strong ones.
Now, I've had a very interesting conversation with folks lately about something I really believe strongly in. Almost all the cigars out there now, except for the ones that are Dominican Puros, almost all of them have some type of Nicaraguan tobacco in it.
Okay.
And I think there's going to be a point where people are going to get burnt out on Nicaraguan tobacco. And they're going to go back to the Dominican.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing.
So you're saying it's just a trend? Is it a trend, kind of?
Well, what's happening is a lot of the newer smokers, and I'll say younger folk, because almost everybody's younger than I am that's smoking nowadays. But the younger folk, basically, they want to get these really strong cigars, and they're like, give me the strong ones. I want the strong ones, So if somebody pulls one in that's a strong one, I'm all, they're all about it. They're going to burn out their palate.
For sure.
And nobody knows and has taken enough time to figure out what they need to do to bring their palate back once they've burned it out. So they just keep burning it out.
Yeah.
And they don't really taste anything. All they're doing is smoking it because it's strong and somebody says it's strong. So, hey, I look like I'm macho because I'm smoking a strong cigar.
Yeah. Well, we've seen a lot of here, and I've seen a lot of guys get, green in the face and leave out. And it's just like, look, smoke what you can smoke. I mess with people when they smoke their flavored cigars and stuff like that, and I'm like, get a real man cigar or something like that. But at the end of the day, I'm just joking because that's what we do.
Well, when I was at Tinderbox, we used to always start young smokers out, or beginning smokers, with Macanudos.
Okay.
Because Macanudo is a very, very good, mild cigar, and it's great for somebody to start with. Now, some people will stay with the Macanudo, and I've had a couple of friends that's all they smoke is Macanudos.
Yeah.
And that's fine. But most people progress up because they want to try different things. And that's why I tell people, try everything. Don't stick with just one cigar because you're going to find all kinds of things that are really going to be appealing to you.
Yeah. And fortunately for me, in my young 2 years of smoking cigars, I've smoked a wide range of cigars because the people I know, they try this or try that. They're smoking something that I really like. I'm kind of getting my own little preference. I like anything that AJ Fernandez does. I pretty much smoke. I like it.
Well, I can show you something that you wouldn't want to smoke.
I'm sure you could. What with AJ? Okay.
That he's blended.
So
because it doesn't blend everything at a certain level, and you get some of the ones that are the lower end that he's blended, which he has. They're okay, but there's nothing really great about them.
Yeah.
And you walk away going, well, okay,
I'm a little disappointed. I think with the New Worlds though, I like the New Worlds.
New Worlds are a great cigar.
Yeah, those ones I started because I can go online and order.
Southern Comfort. That's a great line that he's done.
See, I never had one. I don't know too much about those, so I never ordered them.
The Southern Comfort, the two that I like the most are the Rose of Sharon.
Okay.
And Jacob's Ladder.
I think I've had one. I think I've had that.
The Jacob's Ladder is in Maduro, and Rosa Sharon is in Connecticut.
Okay.
And before we stop, I did want to say one other thing. It's about military, but I'll wait until then. So you tell me when you get close to the end. One last thing I want to say.
Oh yeah. We're gonna wind down anyway. I think I'm looking at the time. I've gotten my share of cigars from you. I think every time I see you, you give me something nice, and even to a point, Paul gives me stuff like some sticks. I sit here. He's like, "Have you tried this?" Nope. You know I haven't tried that. Well, here you go. Enjoy it because you're never going to see it again. But I enjoy, just the knowledge. That's kind of why I like to sit here with you, because I always sit next to Paul, and we always talk about cigars and things like that. So like I see you, but I never really get a chance to really talk to you for a long period of time. I think the first time I really talked to you, we was talking about Band of Brothers, and you gave me that story, and I was like, oh, that was really cool. And I think ever since then, we've always spoken to each other and always had like some type of greeting, which I appreciate. I enjoy seeing you, and I talk about you all the time here. To Paul, and ask if I haven't seen you, I ask how you doing and things like that. So it's always a pleasure. And like I said, I thank you for doing a podcast with me, because I think my audience will enjoy these conversations.
Well, and I hope so. And I'm glad to do it for you.
Mm-hmm. It's always good. I'm going to talk. I want to let you get to your I'm going to ask you one more question before you tell me.
Okay.
When I talk to people about cigars, how important, or what is it, the cigar community, how is important that to you? Or like, I forget the way I want to answer that. I'm going to say, how important is the cigar community to you?
Well, one of the things that you find when you go to cigar shops is that you can talk to almost everybody. And you find people from all different walks of life. And I think that's the beauty of it. Is because you all have a commonality or common interest, which is the cigar. You can be talking to, and we didn't get into this, but in D.C., my wife retired from the U.S. Senate after 35 years as a staffer.
Okay.
And the last 18 years I was there was a lobbyist. Okay. And I used to smoke cigars with senators and congressmen and what have you. And when you're smoking with them, this is going to sound absolutely crazy, but it's true. When you're smoking with them, you become equal with them. They no longer are acting like a senator or a congressman. They're talking to you just like a normal person. But when you talk to them otherwise, you have to be formal. And you have to, but when you're sitting around just, shooting the bull and having a cigar, and they are just regular Joes, just like we are.
Yes, sir.
And that's the really beauty of it. And by the way, I was going to tell you, if you ever come to my house, we have a wall or a little area in our house where we have a bunch of pictures up from different things that we did in D.C. And one of them is a picture of the Band of Brothers.
Oh, cool.
That I took at Walter Reed before it closed down.
And Walter Reed, I had a surgery there at Walter Reed. Yeah.
It's closed down.
Yeah, you told. I didn't know until you told me. Maybe last year you told me.
They now call Walter Reed at Bethesda.
Okay.
Because Bethesda Naval and Walter Reed blended together. And the reason is that there was not a metro stop close to Walter Reed. Okay. But there is one right across the street and right there at Bethesda.
Okay.
So that's the reason why they did it. One of the main reasons why they did it, also to bring both of them together so they didn't spend money at Walter Reed and money at Bethesda.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I haven't been to DC in a while. I'm looking forward to going back.
Well, when I was there, I loved it. It's a little different now.
Oh, definitely a little different now.
But when I was there, I loved it. It was a great place to live, raise two sons in that area.
So you live in the Chattanooga area now?
Sure do.
How long you been in Chattanooga?
6 years.
6 years. How was that for you?
It was an interesting change.
Yeah.
My wife worked for 2 senators from Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
She worked for Bill Frist,
Okay.
and she was his scheduler and worked for him when he was a Senate Majority Leader.
Okay.
So she had an office was in the Capitol.
Mm-hmm.
And then she worked for Bob Corker, who's from here in Chattanooga.
Okay.
And he was the one that kind of put a full court press on us to come to move to Chattanooga, and we're glad he did.
Yes, sir. Sometimes all you need is that push. Yes.
And we love it. I mean, the people here are wonderful. It's the cost of living is so much less than DC.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and it's just a wonderful place to retire and have a great time and meet great people and enjoy yourself.
For sure. I like it.
But don't move here. Don't anybody move here. We got enough people.
That's funny because a lot of people say that. And I know you get people always, well, I'll say that people always move here because I went to school here and I ended up becoming a resident of Cleveland because it is a cool place. It's a nice spot. And for me, I like quietness, but if I want to go somewhere, Atlanta's there, Chattanooga's there. You got Birmingham is 2 hours away, Nashville. You know, we're in the nucleus of even in
Atlanta.
Yeah.
Hour and a half.
Yeah, we're in the nucleus of a lot of big cities. So we want to have that big city feeling. We can always go, you know.
But you can get most everything you want here in Chattanooga.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, if you need to go out, you can. But, you know, generally speaking, you get most anything you want.
Yeah.
Unless if you want to own a Rolls Royce, yeah, you'll have to go to Nashville or Atlanta.
Yeah.
But there aren't a lot of Rolls Royces around Chattanooga. But there are a few.
Yeah. Been a few. So I don't know. I like it here in this Cleveland, Chattanooga area. It's pretty cool. It's grown on me, and I don't think I can live anywhere else right now.
But you know, the thing about it is, and for the people listening, home is what you make it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and if you get into the community and you get involved, everything can be cool.
And that's what I'm trying to do now. Get involved, and I'm trying to join some groups and things like that. That's making an impact in our community because I want to take pride in my community. So,
and that's what we did when we were in D.C. We used to do the honor flights that came in from World War II.
Mm-hmm.
Helped a lot of guys that were Vietnam veterans that had problems with PTS, and we'd bring them in from around the country, and we'd take them around and show them, and then go to the wall. And it's amazing how much of a catharsis that is for people to go to the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is once they go, they can make their peace.
Yes, sir.
You know, because they can see their buddies and you know, say whatever they want to say and do whatever they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And once they do that, it helps give them a small part of closure.
Yeah, and that's always a good thing to have closure.
And just to see people. And I'm going to say this. The one last thing that I did, I want to talk about the military, is you can see the shirt that I'm wearing and you can see this. That's a likeness of what's called a Tomb Guard ID badge.
Okay.
And that's for people that have marched at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the privilege of marching at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier and ended up having problems with my ankles.
Okay.
Because when we click our heels, we have metal cheaters, and sometimes they don't always meet the way they're supposed to.
Yeah.
And so I have some little bone fragments in my ankles.
Wow.
And so they used to swell up all the time. So I ended up leaving that and going back and being a casket bearer.
Okay.
But one of the things is that when I was at the tomb, it's amazing how you can see people that are standing there watching you, that you represent their son, their brother, their father, their grandfather, uncle, whoever it is.
Mm-hmm.
When they're standing there watching you march in front of the unknown of World War I, World War II, and the Korean, they actually found out who the Vietnam veteran was. He was identified as Lieutenant Blessing.
Okay.
But anyhow, when you see them, it makes sense. why we do it and why we should have it.
And I would think I got a little goosebumps, but like I was feel like you representing them is a big sense of pride that you have, and it's something that you take serious. Not, I don't think that you would take it serious, but you take it really serious, and I think that's take on a lot of pride doing it.
You do.
Mm-hmm.
You work to get there. But
Mm-hmm.
I want to tell you, and for everybody out there, if you're a young kid, you're thinking about what to do in the service, and you want to do something, and you have an idea that you might want to do something like that. If a kid from Kansas like me can do it, anybody can do it. You just have to have the desire to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And the desire will take you a lot of places that you can't get otherwise.
I like that. On that note, I think I like that quote. So on that note, I think we're going to end it. Unless you got something else to say.
No, sir.
Well, Joe, I definitely appreciate you coming on the show. Anytime you want to come on, you always welcome.
Anytime you ask me, I'll come on.
Yes, sir, man. I appreciate that, man. Until the next time.